Hi, I just wanted to make a quick video to talk about really the problems of doing analysis on the data compared with the story that comes out of the media. And really, there's two core issues, I think, with the media narrative, and there are two specific reasons, kind of they're out there. Now, obviously, media outlets want to be consumed, so creating sensational headlines is important, and also probably creating some sort of certainty. It's not about saying you don't know what's going on. You need to say you know what's going on, and then that needs to be a sensational story. And there's definitely a bias in the media towards that. There's no doubt about that, as there is on every single topic that we ever look at. Now, what I wanted to do today was just quickly take a look on Worldometer. Look at the stories going around, and it's not just the media. We've seen the head of the WHO today, I think, or maybe it was yesterday. He said that the pandemic is accelerating, and I think it's worth sort of looking at that and saying, right, well, do we know that? Is that speculation? Has that got some evidence behind it? Is there a problem with that evidence? I think that's really important. But you'll also see that although you can sort of say a lot about how it's speculative, you also can't say that it won't happen, because at any moment in time we don't know anything about the pandemic and what its path will be. So nobody could say, well, it's not going to happen, or I can't see whether it's happening right now because actually we have to be patient and wait for data. These are the problems you face. So let's take a quick look at what's going on in the world. So this is Worldometer, and I'm just putting 7-day averages on each of the daily new cases and the daily death charts. And we'll take a little zoom in a second to those. But what's the WHO talking about? It's talking about this, the daily cases going up and up and up and up and up and up. So if you look at the case data, you immediately see what they're talking about. It seems obvious. Yes, more people have got COVID, therefore the pandemic is accelerating. But the problem is that cases have more to do with testing, and the longer time goes on, the more capacity countries have to test, the more testing happens, the more cases are revealed. Any good scientist will tell you that the number of confirmed cases is a fraction. It's an unknown fraction, but it's a fraction of the real number of cases. Now, we suspect, it's below 10%, could be 1%, could be below 1%. We actually don't know. And that's the truth. We don't know. So therefore, if you increase testing, you'll find more cases. So what should definitely be true, and we've seen this throughout, is that testing increases, cases increase, that causes issues. So we've got that acceleration. Now, deaths on the other side give us a different challenge. Although there will be some underreporting and overreporting of deaths, on average, that's going to be the same over time. Except for very early on in epidemics in countries, we see underreporting of deaths there, but very quickly that catches up, because when people are really ill and end up in hospital, they get tested, which is a small fraction of those that are actually infected. Once they're severely ill, etc., we get to see their symptoms, they're observed. Most deaths will have some sort of test against them. So, and there's speculatively people, do it from symptoms. So I think it's pretty unlikely that they're underreported. There's a good case for overreported, but again, I don't think that matters as long as it's consistent. As long as it's consistent, and all we're trying to do is to talk about, is it getting better, is it getting worse? And I think then we can answer this kind of question. So if we look at the deaths, we see a completely different pattern. We've seen a peak here, April 12th, which probably corresponds to a similar peak, ironically. Now, there should be a lag of about 14 days between these two. Why? Because it takes at least 7 days, well, probably more like 9 days, because most tests are in hospital, especially at the start. It should be about 14 days. Maybe as testing gets better, we might see an average of 6 or 7 days come in. It's an average of 23 days from the peak, from the point of infection to death. So therefore, deaths will always lag. It would have lagged by 2 weeks. It might be 2.5 weeks by now, because of the change in testing regimes. But either way, we can now look at this and we can say, well, okay, when did the cases start rising? And we can say, well, probably, that's pretty much it's risen there, but if we say until it really starts going up that curve, that's like May 17th. So that's a really long time ago. That's nearly 2 months ago. And what do we see in the deaths? Well, there's been some rising, there's been some falling, but mainly it's pretty flat. If we're honest, it goes up, it goes down, and it goes flat. So we're not seeing that, and we're not seeing that acceleration reflected in the deaths yet. Now, yet means, look, you've got a 2-week lag on this data, let's say. Could be 2.5 weeks. So we can't actually see what's going on in the world at the moment with deaths, but we can more robustly see what happened 2 weeks ago. And what that's telling us is basically 2 weeks ago, that's nonsense. The virus is not accelerating. It is not going away, which is very frustrating. It seems to be on a level. But I think we also have to bear in mind that different parts of the world are at different stages, and that's what's causing that. So whereas the early bump is North America and Europe, what we're now seeing is a movement into South America, which caused the initial kind of hill here. This is South America here. And then this is being held up both by the fact that things are quite steady in South America. The virus isn't going away, showing a completely different pattern to Europe. And the other thing is that we've got certain areas of Asia, so Russia and India, taking up the mantle there. And we can take a closer look at those charts and see exactly, exactly what we're talking about. Here's the cases, clearly going up. And actually, if we use a 7-day moving average, we can see it's been clearly going up since what, end of April. So over 2 months, cases have been going up. And then if we look at deaths, it's down here. Let's total those, there we go, there's daily deaths, and we put a 7-day average on it. We can see actually things are pretty steady. Yeah. Yes, there is some up and down. Yes, there is some movement. We certainly shouldn't say the pandemic is going away, but accelerating in the way this is an acceleration curve here. This is clearly nothing like it here. There are some ups, there are some downs, but we're not seeing exponential growth in any shape or form. That would be completely untrue. So is it possible that there's a second wave and an exponential growth? Yes, that could have happened in the last 2 weeks. We don't know. But is there any evidence for it? Any solid evidence for it? No, there's no solid evidence at all. And what we're seeing is that using cases there is an incredibly bad way of looking at what's going on. America is very similar. Here we see the states. A lot of media attention paid to this massive increase in cases. Some pushback from the federal government about the fact that it's to do with testing increasing. Pushback because we don't like Trump and we think he's an idiot, which is fine. But, even idiots tell the truth sometimes. Is that the case? Well, we can't say that these rises in the last 2 weeks, which sort of, you're talking about going back to about here, so about halfway up the curve, we can't talk about yet. But we do have this prelim, this first half bit, weeks and weeks ago. And if we go down to deaths, we can see that we actually don't know. You'll notice this slight uptick here. The problem is Independence Day. So maybe this is an uptick in deaths. Maybe it isn't. Don't know. We've got 3 days of underreporting, followed by some weekend days. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And that's the problem, the uncertainty and the patience. We need to wait. Over the next week or so, we'll be able to resolve that to see whether there's been an increase or not. And it will take 2 weeks to see what kind of increase we're looking at. If it's a slight swell, that means that the virus has probably got into states where it had been incredibly low levels before, and maybe there's a slight swell in deaths. We're seeing that in Texas, for instance. And that's becoming significant, and that's great. Not great, but that's fine. The thing is, are we going to see an exponential growth? Are we going to see this kind of thing again? And of course, you can clearly see there's absolutely no sign of that at the moment. So again, patience and uncertainty, dealing with uncertainty. And that's the core issue. And it doesn't make for good media headlines. And that's why we get continuously bombarded by sensational stories about upticks in cases. It doesn't mean this isn't a serious situation. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be monitoring it and concerned about where the pandemic is going. But it does mean we need to be a hell of a lot more careful about the assertions we make around data. I hope that video was helpful. Thank you.